Chad Ferrin. Chad, buddy. Thank you so much for coming out. Come to do a little rolling with Olan.
Well, thanks for having me, Jeff.
Yeah, of course. And, we go way back, but I just wanted to,
How far back?
I don't know, we'll probably get into that. We'll get into part of it.
Sure.
But I appreciate you doing this live and in person because I know that, a lot of your podcasts over the years, and you've done many, many, many of them, have been virtual. So, I'm really excited, really, really excited to have you here and doing this.
Thank you.
So, for my audience, this is, we're talking about Hollywood. We're talking about, the past, the present, the future, and what have you. And let's just dig in deep with you. First of all, you started out, and I know a lot about you, but I've also learned about you doing a little bit of, research, this and that, or what have you, as we all do. You grew up on a farm back in Minnesota, and you, on a daily basis, weekly basis, whatever, you saw animals being slaughtered. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I grew up on a little farm about 30 miles south of Minneapolis, near a town called New Prague, Minnesota. And, it's like 160-acre cattle, horses, pigs. I mean, we have pretty much anything and everything. And, once in a while, a pig would get sick or something, and my dad would take a .22 pistol and go up behind its ear and shoot it from the head, and you'd watch it fall and kick and bleed and die. And it's one of those things that you don't forget too easily. And one of the things that helped me kind of become a vegetarian easily is because when you get to know an animal and you like an animal, you see it's got intelligence, you see it's got personality, you see it's got, you don't want to eat it.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a tough thing growing up in the Midwest in, the 80s and, the late 70s and, not eating meat, and people would think you're, a weirdo. And, so you just kind of learn to, one of the things that kind of in my life is don't preach and try to get your convictions on other people. Just live your life as you want to live it. If you don't want to eat meat, don't eat meat. Don't shove it down other people's throats, or maybe make them aware of why you do these things, and maybe they can say, "Oh, that's interesting." And then they'll get into a documentary on how it's done, or they'll go visit a slaughterhouse, or they go see these things, and they'll kind of change their tune on it. But for me, it was just one of those things of, if I'm not willing to kill an animal with my own hands, I'm not going to eat it. Having killed them with my own hands at times, whether it be a chicken wringing its neck or cutting the throat of, a rooster because you're going to eat it. It's one of those things. It's a tough thing to do. When you do it, it's like you feel like shit.
Yeah. I can only imagine. So with that, did that kind of stuff? I mean, doing that as you're younger, and killing the animals the way you were as you saw, did that form an impression on you as you started getting into horror movies? And obviously I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but I just want to know if that formed any kind of impression on you.
I think it forms just a harder look at life. It's not that things can just end in a second. And for me, the horror films were a great escape from a crappy home life and parents that weren't. I'm not going to rag on my parents in any way because they did the best they could, but at the same time, it wasn't your average Leave It to Beaver episode. And being a kid, you'd be watching Leave It to Beaver, and it's like, geez, I wish my folks were like that, or treated me like that, or the life was like that. But it wasn't. And I quickly learned that even though television and film paints a different reality than what actually is, whether it be a horror film or whether it be a drama or whatever it be. It's just that whatever you're given, make the best of it. So I quickly learned that, instead of harping on, I wish I had that or wish it did that, just make the best of what you have and try to attain the things that you want. And for me, horror films were just something that clicked. Watching, Twilight Zone or Alfred Hitchcock Presents or One Step Beyond on a little black and white TV as a kid, as basically my babysitter, was something that I just enjoyed the escapism of it.
Yeah. And so, what was the timing when you left Minnesota? I know you came out to LA. You were working for a company as a production assistant and what have you. Can you go into that a little bit and just give the audience how you started out?
Sure. No. originally I kind of thought of acting because I was taking a theater class in a community college, and they're like, one of the projects was to write, direct, and act in a play. You could pick one of those.
Yeah.
And being kind of antisocial as I am, and as I grew up, I basically said, I didn't really like anyone in this class, so I'm just going to write, direct, and star in this thing myself.
Your own thing.
So I had a couple friends come in and play a couple other roles in it. It was basically called Fast Food, Slow Death, going back to the animal stuff. So it was basically about a cook who kind of snaps and he kills the customers and then he fries them up. So we were doing this on stage, and it was, it's just so exciting and invigorating that I'm like, you know what? The acting side of it, not so much, but the directing and the kind of writing it and kind of working it all out, and when it kind of gelled and the audience was clapping and howling because it was completely different. It had fake blood, it had all this stuff on a stage thing, and I'm like, this is really something that I got to do on a grander scale. So I told my mom that I'm like, I think I want to move to California and make a go at it. And she's like, well, before you do that, let me call up Lori. Actually, Lori's brother, Barry. Barry was a car salesman in New Prague who I had bought a car from, and I knew him well. And she's like, well, he has a sister who babysat you when you were a little kid named Lori, and Lori is married to a producer out in Los Angeles, and he makes movies. Call him up. She calls up Barry. Barry calls up his sister. The sister calls up my mom, and she's like, well, what's the deal? Well, look, Chad wants to make movies. Well, let me ask my husband, Mike, if there's anything for him. Then call up and say, hey, we're doing this film called The Prophecy with Christopher Walken if he wants to come out. Wow. I packed up my car, jumped in, started, and drove the 2,000 miles, and bought a Thomas guide, and I'm like, okay, their offices are at Beverly Boulevard, and and I found it. Stayed at a little hotel, the one with swingers. The restaurant.
Oh, yeah. Where they shot that?
I stayed in that hotel because it was like right across the street from the offices. And then the next day I showed up, a big smile, 22 years old, and I'm like, I'm here.
You're here.
And they're like, okay, well, here's a script. Go deliver this to Crispin Glover.
Unbelievable.
So you basically have a script and the address, and basically driving all over Los Angeles, delivering scripts, dropping things off at set, doing, I was an office PA on that. And then,
a production assistant.
And then did different films for about 2.5 years.
Unbelievable.
Moving up from, office production assistant to camera assistant to all these different things. And at the same time, sitting in the editing room and watching the editors work on these different projects and just being so mesmerized and excited by the whole thing. And really was not only a magical experience, but it was a magical time.
Yeah.
Before cell phones, before any of this stuff, in my view, corrupted people's sense of getting stuff done. Mm-hmm. If you wanted to drive somewhere, you had to know how to get there.
Yeah.
Now people just type into their phone and I'm a taxi driver.
Yeah.
And they're doing whatever, whereas normally they would never do these things because they wouldn't know how to get there.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have the fortuity to study that Thomas guide, to find these maps, to find these things, to write it out. I remember, dropping something off that was so far away and so weird to get there that the night before I would draw it all up, find the map, and then actually even drive there just so I'd be on time the next day. And, it was just those things of just this excitement.
Those were the days, but by you doing that, by you drawing it out, by you learning everything that you could learn in the editing room, everything from production work, and this and that, the slower way than it is now. Sure. You were able to learn and take that with you, be proactive, and to where you are now, which is, amazing. But, so you did all that, and then your first movie was your first movie that you actually got into that you said, hey, I want to do was Unspeakable.
Right.
And you sold your house in Minnesota for that. Tell us about that, because that's a huge thing to do, to sell a house.
First one,
to make a film.
My first short film, actually short film where I hired a crew and a camera and all the things of, whatever. I had gotten into a car, someone rear-ended me, and they basically did that thing. Oh, my neck hurts. Oh, he's got whiplash. Okay. You know, you get the shyster lawyer who basically chased the ambulance and, you know, oh, you're horribly hurt. I am. Oh, yeah, you got to go to the chiropractor. He's going to tell you if you're horribly hurt. Okay. You go to the chiropractor. Oh, man, you're all messed up.
No.
I feel fine. No, you got to tell this and this. Tell you the spiel. Okay, I'll tell this spiel.
You worked it.
Oh, man. So you end up getting, you know, $20,000. Half of that goes to the lawyer. Another $5,000 to the chiropractor. So I ended up with $5,000. I'm like, I'm going to take this $5,000 and I'm going to make a movie. A short movie, because, you know, at that time it's like, man, you make a short film and you're getting into Sundance, you're going to be, you know, the next Spielberg. So, of course, you know, you type out a little, you know, 5-minute script, you do this stuff, you hire the cast, you hire the crew. It was called Bloodbath. We shot it on 16 and then, you know, edited it at Neo, the company that I worked with, off hours with one of the editors there. And, you know, okay, this is it. Got it. VHS tapes. Send it out to all these great festivals. Nothing. And so I thought, man, I just blew $5,000 on a weekend shoot, and I'm like, you know, there's got to be a better way.
And so right.
So my house in Minnesota, I had a condo in Burnsville, Minnesota. I had immaculate credit. It was one of those things from 16 years old. I worked every job in the book, you know, from watch salesman to shoe salesman to whatever. I've been living on my own since I was 16. And, you know, just built up credit. Got my mom to help co-sign on the loan for the condo. She did. It was fine. Ended up paying off the condo. Everything was great. Then when I moved out here, I'm like, oh, maybe I should sell the condo and make a movie.
Wow.
Stupidest thing in the world. But at the time, it's like, who else is going to give me money?
Yeah.
I've got to do it myself. I don't want to do it myself. And at that time, in retrospect, houses were nothing. I mean, you could get whatever for it.
Yeah.
You thought it was going forever. And it was the advice that my mother said, you know, why don't you just rent it out? Don't sell it. Get a loan out of it. And I should have taken that advice, because then I'd still have it.
Yeah.
And when the value goes up even higher, you dump it. But I didn't. I sold it, and, you know, no regrets. Took that money and made Unspeakable. And it was one of those things, okay, I got $20,000 budget. Let me think of a script that we could do under that. And I wanted to make something not only offensive, but something that'll make a mark.
Yeah.
You know, for $20,000. And it made a mark as it being, you know, offensive and, you know, crude and one of those things. But at the same time, a lot of the reviews said it had style, it had all these things, and it was a company called Troma.
Lloyd Kaufman.
Lloyd Kaufman.
Yeah, what was your relationship with Lloyd?
That was actually, you know, at the time, a relationship that I didn't appreciate as much as I do in hindsight. Mm-hmm. Because, you know...
He was pretty big back then.
They loved the film. There was all this talk of, okay, we're going to make a 35mm print of it. We're going to do a little theatrical run. There were all these things of like, oh, that's great. You know, Toxic Avenger is great. I love your movies. And, you know, and we'll put it on Laserdisc. We'll do all these things. And it was just, you know, for your first movie, it was like, okay, this is great. But there's no money up front.
Hmm.
And it needed some money to finish the post-production, so it was kind of one of those things of, you know, let's see, Paramount rejected it, Warner Brothers rejected it. I mean, that was the other thing, too. You'd get the producer's guide to whatever, and it had all the addresses of every distributor in Los Angeles. So you basically cut your film, get a VHS tape, and mail it out to every distributor that is anybody.
What year was this?
From Artisan, this is like 98.
98, okay.
End of 99, something like that. We shot it in August of 98. Mm-hmm. And, you know, everyone rejected it. Troma loved it. So I'm like, okay, well, let's do it with Troma. So went with them, and one of the greatest benefits was they brought me to the Cannes Film Festival.
Oh, my God.
So
for a $20,000 film that you shot, you wrote it, you directed it, you produced it, you edited it, which we'll talk about later. You're a one-man show, but you did all that for $20,000, and you're going on your first film. Yeah. You're going to the Cannes Film Festival.
Yes.
How was that?
It was magical. I mean, you know, one of the first things was, you know, we flew British Airlines with the other people. They paid for that. And and it was I'm like my first time cross country or overseas, and it was just amazing. I can't say enough. Fell in love with the little French girl there. The croissants, all this stuff, the crazy trauma out on the Place with the signs and the costumes.
VIP all the way.
It was, and he was sleeping on the floor of one of the little places they rented. It was amazing.
Amazing.
I ended up staying an extra month.
Did you really? With the
this
French girl?
Yeah, with the girl going to Marseille.
Eating the croissants.
Yeah. It was great.
But a great time. A great time.
And so that's, again, the value of something that's even more than monetary. Mm-hmm. Someone would be like, oh man, I sold my film for $1 million at Sundance. Okay, I've made it.
Yeah.
And now looking back, and it's like, this was just as good as any of that.
Yeah.
Even though you didn't, get rich from it, you were able to travel, expand your mind, meet people, make friends. I mean,
you hit the jackpot in a different way.
In a different way.
In a different way. But from that,
which I didn't appreciate all the time.
Oh, because
of trauma. Because you're like, okay, they're ripping me off. Where's my money? I should be getting money every week. I should be rich. And then because you think anyone who's making a movie is rich. Yeah. And they're doing well, and they're doing this, and you slowly learn. It's like, well, not every movie is making money, and the distributor might be shady or they might not, but they might not be making money on the movie. Mm-hmm. Watching that SAG strike recently and people whining about the residuals, and it's like, well, how much do you think you're supposed to get from a movie that played this, and it's 5 years later and it's playing nowhere, and you're getting 5 cents every 3 months? Well, how much is that supposed to be? Yeah. In a magical world, I mean, there's no rhyme or reason why a movie is successful. Some of the worst movies are successful. Some of the best movies aren't, or vice versa. I mean, it's kind of a potluck. And for me at the time, it was your expectations were one thing, and then reality sets in. And the older I get and the more I've been around it, reality I kind of now know. Yeah. It's a gamble.
Yeah. Well, Chad, you did that, and you've done so much since. And there's so much to unwrap here, but I'm just gonna go into it a little bit here. I want the audience to know, that you're mainly right now, you are a horror film director, but not only a director, you're a horror film maker. Although we could talk about different, genres down the line here, but you are a one-man show. I said it earlier. You're a one-man show. You write. You get the idea. You write. You direct. You edit. You produce. You are involved with distribution completely. And all of that came from the trauma thing. I think from you learning what a good and bad deal was there. Sure. You learned all that. But let me ask you a question, because you're a man who has right now, I think you've written, and everything you've done on your own. I mean, everything you've done, everything you've written, correct me if I'm wrong, everything you've written, you've made. You've made every picture. I believe about 14 or 15 of them now. If I'm correct, I've been involved with about 3 or 4 of them, maybe 5. But everything that you not only write it, but you direct it and you actually make the film. It's done. It's not something you're writing and then you put up on the shelf that the script is sitting up there. You actually do it, which is something in itself. But how do you, when you get an idea, or an idea is brought to you, from what I know about you, you take a script and you literally can get into that script and write it within 2 weeks. How the heck do you do that?
Well, I mean, if that's your profession or your motivation in life, you do it. There's no day job, there's no night job. It's one step at a time, and it's always like, okay, if the script is there, that's number one. Plow into it to get it done as fast as you can, and then worry about the details. It's kind of like, I'm working on a script now, and it's like, if you think how much, you got 90 more pages to do or whatever it is, you're never going to get anywhere. Just think of the first page, then the second page, then the third page, and then the fourth page. Don't look to the end. Don't look to the middle. Look to each step, and that's with all of filmmaking. Because it gets very daunting.
Right.
If you look at all the things that you have to do, oh my God, we've got to shoot it, we've got to edit it, we've got to post sound, we've got to do, the color, then there's the festivals, then there's the distribution deal. I don't think about any of that crap. It's just that first page of that script. get that done. If that gives you a hard on, move on.
Oh.
You know, and if
Yeah.
the next page is good, move on, move on. And I never read any of it until
Yeah.
that script is completely done. Then I will go back, reread it, rewrite it, tighten it up, do whatever it is. But don't lose the momentum from that first page or that first thing, or don't get sidetracked by how much crap you have to do to finish this thing. It's one thing at a time and do it as fast as you can, and then worry about the details. It's kind of the Roger Corman school of thing. They would shoot these movies in like a week, and they would have this time, and it's that same philosophy. Look, time is money.
Yeah.
And my time in writing a script is get it done as fast as you can, because the value of it is then more. If someone's giving you $5,000 to write a script and you write it in 2 days, it's like, hey man, what a paycheck.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but
But if it takes forever.
in reality, it doesn't look like much of anything.
Yeah.
But if you say, well, I wrote that script in 2 weeks and, you know, there was $10,000 for it, it's like, hey, $10,000. You know, $5,000 a week is a good.
Yeah, it's a good
payday.
thing. It's a good thing. So that's your process. Whereas others, I'm guessing the majority of others, they go into it where they have to have a beginning, they have to have a middle, and they have to have an end. You don't really ever think about that?
Well,
You just start with page one and then...
Well, I start with page one. Sometimes an idea will hit me where I know the end of the film, but I don't, you know, worry about it.
Mhm.
I just kind of go stage by stage, and sometimes, you know, you wake up and you're like, oh, I got this great movie. Here's the idea. Here's, you know, I know how it's going to end. You know, like the script I'm writing now, I'm, you know, 90 pages in. It'll probably be 120, 130 page script, because it's a true crime film based on Dorothy Puente. And, you know, I'm 90 pages in, and I'm, you know, probably got another, you know, 30, 40 pages to go.
Mhm.
Just because there's a lot of stuff to cover in her life. And I know how it ends because she died in prison. So you have that, of course, as your end, and then, you know, other things. But I don't sit there and think exactly how that end is going to be while I'm writing the beginning or the middle.
Yeah. Now you talk about a script at 120 pages, and people that know this business know this. Most do, but others don't. Doesn't it calculate to one page is usually 1 minute of a movie?
Yes.
So if you're writing a 120-page script, it's a 2-hour movie, but that's after possibly editing this and that, or you decide you want to do a reshoot or any kind of other coverage.
Sure.
It could be anywhere from like an hour and 3/4 to 2-hour movie.
Yeah, I mean, most scripts are 90 pages. I mean, 85, I mean, around there. This is really extra long because it's just a lot of stuff. And again, I mean, I could go, when I finish it, go through it and cut it down to 90.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a matter of, it's like, oh, why did I write that? There's so many things that when you use the momentum of doing it, and, you know, the hardest thing I find, if I force myself to sit there and stare at that screen and try to come up with ideas, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I just kind of like open it up, page one, finish it. I'm burned out, smoke, drink some Dr. Pepper, think, and the idea will hit me, whether it's in 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, the next morning, whatever it is, and let just the energy and the flow of it take its own kind of control of it. You know, and a lot of things, you know, if you write a great scene that you're happy with and proud of, that helps kind of spur the next thing, or, you know, you feel really good about a project because it's like, oh, we can possibly get this script to Sharon Stone.
Mm-hmm.
Then that kind of ups your thing of, okay, let's not put in some penises and some
Yeah.
things, some gore. Let's kind of try to be a little more, I hate to say mainstream, but a little less controversial.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the same time, peppering things that, you know, get me as a filmmaker excited, or whether it is, and if you envision Sharon Stone doing this and that helps you, and whether she doesn't even look at it or whatever, it tells you to go to hell, at least for the moment, it's a spur of inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're completely inspired. You've got so much going on. You go from one film to the next to the next. You do at least one film a year, and I could say that by knowing you. Look, we've known each other for a long time. Full transparency, you asked me years ago to produce with you, and I just didn't have the time. I was so busy casting through Jeff Olan Casting and doing so many different projects that I never had the time. And then finally, the end of 2019 or so, you talked to me about a script called The Deep Ones.
Right.
And we were talking about it, and you said, do you want to do it? I said, yeah, why not? And then, of course, we're doing it, and the pandemic hits.
Right.
But even since then, we've still been involved with about 3 or 4 different movies. We did The Deep Ones, we did Nightcrawler, we did Pig Killer, we've done Scalper, which is out now. But I've seen your technique, and I've learned so much from you, which is incredible, because as I only did Holy Hollywood years ago, which I think, if I recall, you might have been you were a camera assistant or something on it. You helped out, if I recall.
Was boom operator.
You were a boom operator. Yeah. When I did Holy Hollywood, Mickey Rooney and Tony Tarantino and Al Pacino, which was great. Great days. Wonderful. Old time. Loved it. Terry Zarki directed it. Unbelievable. But since then, you have asked me to collaborate on several projects, and I said yes because I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn a little bit about your technique. But it's very hard to get into the mind of Chad Ferrin, and that's what we're trying to do right now. You have been a horror film director, but you go from film to film, like I've said. But you also use or tend to use a lot of the same actors, and possibly in the same crew. Can you tell us why, and what are you getting out of that exactly?
Well, no surprises, I guess. I mean, you find people that you like, whether it's personal or creatively, if they're doing good work and they show up on time and they're fun to be around and they're not complaining, you work with them again, because and I think that if you have all people that have that same work ethic and that same kind of gung-ho attitude, that the set's going to be a fun, relaxed, exciting place to be, not something like, oh, God, I got to go, And I like surrounding myself with those people, and, we just have fun doing it. And especially when you got to shoot these things in 9 days or 10 days, you need people who know that thing. It's fine to work with someone who has into 1 or 2 speckled in, but everyone else kind of has your back and they know the process, and there's no surprises.
Yeah, it's a family. It's definitely a family.
Yeah.
And you talk about shooting, 8 days, 9 days. Maybe I think the longest we ever did might have been 12 days. That's insane. But we do a lot of pages every day. We're crazily going, but yeah, we're having a good time with it.
Yeah.
You have a fascination with H.P. Lovecraft. Tell me about that.
Well, it was one of those things where, as a kid growing up and reading Lovecraft, I was always kind of like, it just didn't really hook me. And it was just too beyond me, and then, I think it was like, I still appreciated what he was coming and the things and the inspiration of other films and other works is monumental. But for me, I really wasn't hooked on his writing as a kid. And then the Deep Ones came up just because, Gina, she had a beach house. Mm-hmm. And she's like, hey, you can use this beach house in Ventura as a location. Okay. And I'll put in this much. And then Robert Miano's like, well, I got someone who'll put in this much and this much and this much. It's like, okay, we got $50,000. Beach house, free location. Ocean, cult, Lovecraft. So I'm like, I got to reread some Lovecraft. So I went to the library, checked out a bunch of Lovecraft stuff and the internet, and started reading his different stories and being like, man, this guy was great. It kind of reinvigorated my not only my passion for reading. Sometimes you go in spurts of and then when you find an author you like or something, whether it's Shakespeare or Lovecraft or whoever, and you start reading it, and it's the right timing in your life for it, and it fits and it works and it's enthralling and it's like, oh my God, this is amazing stuff, And so I just got really into Lovecraft, started reading everything that he had written, and then the story Shadow over Innsmouth kind of worked with the beach house and the cult and the Rosemary's Baby aspect that we kind of wanted to work into that, and it just kind of fell into place. And it was one of those shoots that it was kind of the first. Well, I guess Parasites kind of used it a little bit, but this was more of the first this person puts in this much, this person puts in this much, drips and drabs, and they get a starring role or a producer credit, they kind of get the hands-on thing. And if someone wants to get into the business, that's not a bad way, because you're investing, and in theory you're getting a return if it does well or if it, whatever. And so we kind of all went into that business model, and it worked to the sense that everyone had skin in the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they brought their best to the table, and they were along the ride until it's sold, and then they help promote it, and then they do all the things, and it's all as much as you want to put into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of the return. If someone wants to say, hey, well, I invested in this movie and I did this and I did this, and then they disappear, and it's like, look, the movie, years later is still alive. Are you out tweeting about it? Or are you out putting it on your Facebook? Are you promoting it? And I think a lot of people lose sight of, it lives forever.
Yeah.
It's not just like, hey, I shot it and I'm done, even though I don't go back to my other films, I still, if a review comes up, I'll post it, I'll talk,
Yeah.
You've got to always kind of be working it to get it out there, because if you're not working it, who else is?
Yeah. Well, the investment process on independent filmmaking is interesting, but the way that you do it, or we do it, is even more interesting. And I remember with the Deep Ones, that was the first film that I got involved with you. So I wanted to learn everything in all aspects. And I even put in, I think I put $5,000 into the film, because I was like, okay, I'm going to put some money into it. I'm going to see what this does and what have you. Different amounts of money were coming from different people and what have you. But I was able to learn, and I was also able to learn that I put money in there, and hopefully I wouldn't necessarily have to put it into other projects. We get other people's money, the whole investment thing.
Sure.
But you're absolutely right. And people that want to learn the industry, it's a great way to just invest in your own project, invest in your own tool, as I say.
Well, it goes back to, selling my house. And one of those things of, and I wouldn't ask an investor to do something that I hadn't done. Mm-hmm. I had done it. And the same thing when you ask an actor, hey, here's a fake gun with a blank and whatever, put it next to your head and pull the trigger. I'm not doing that. And I grab it and I do it and I blow it. I'll do anything that I'm asking an actor to do. And the same thing with an investor. I could say, well, look, I invested my own funds into a film. I've done those things. And, if you really want to do it and work in the movies and learn, this is a great way to do it. Yeah. It's not a fly-by-night, I got the money, I'm going to go to Vegas and blow it all in hookers and blow. It's a real thing. It's you can be as involved as you want to be for a small investment.
Yeah.
And some people, they'll spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on film school, and it's like, that's one way to do it. And if that's the way you want to do it, do it. God bless you.
There is no roadmap to actually making a picture or a TV show or whatever. You have to do it whatever way you feel comfortable with.
And that's the same with writing, and the same thing with anything. Whatever works for you, do it.
Yeah.
If it takes you 10 years to write a script, and if it's a damn good script, then great. If it's a piece of crap, then geez, you just blew it 10 fucking years.
Yeah.
For me, and it's the same thing about keeping busy and prolific, is you just got to, as long as you've got the energy to do it, do it. Because you might not 10 years from now or 20 years from now. And at least you're keeping busy, you're doing what you love. If some people hate it and some people love it, it doesn't matter at all. It's as long as you, the filmmaker or the writer or the cameraman or whatever, is enjoying that moment.
Yeah.
And learning from it, learning from your mistakes. Somebody will say Scalper's the worst piece of shit ever made. Some other person will say this is the best movie ever made. Who cares? As a filmmaker, I've read great reviews and I've read the worst reviews.
Yeah.
And you got to go, which one is right?
Yeah.
I like the film. I'm happy with it. I stand behind it.
Yeah.
Everything else just kind of evens out, and it is what it is. And you make another one.
Yeah.
And maybe the next one everyone will love, or maybe everyone will hate.
Yeah.
But as long as you what, I liked it. I did the best I could for what I had. Move on to the next one. I don't sit there and go, oh God, horrible review. Yeah. I'll get a call from an actor. Oh, did you read that review? That was horrible. And I'm like, what the hell do I care what the hell they think? Yeah. It's the same thing with a good review.
They're writing it.
What the hell do I care?
They're writing it.
And half of the stuff I can, it's something that's more of a modern thing. I don't know if it's the internet. I don't know if it's politics. I don't know what the hell it is. But within one or two lines, I can totally read this person's political ideology, their wokeness, their whatever the hell it is within a review on a B-movie horror thing. You know, whether it's be, you know, anti-Semitic or, you know, anti-trans or any of these things that it's like, I'm none of these things, but they picked this out of a movie, speckled in their little review, and now I know that whole person's ideology or their political preference, and it's like, I shouldn't know that about a reviewer.
Yeah.
That's reviewing a B movie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you get a lot of reviews. All your films. I mean, you're very well known in the horror film community. You get written up about. You're interviewed a lot. All kinds of different things. I mean, where's that in your head right now as far as knowing the success that you have had with, you know, the kid coming out from Minnesota, now that you know the success that you've had with 14 films that are banked, 2 more that are possibly going in this year. I mean, do you ever pinch yourself and go, wow, I've been able to really do what I want to do and having a good time at it?
I don't think, you know, before you know it, it's there. You know, who knew it was 10, 20 years later that you would be here? I think at the time when you make, like, say I make Unspeakable, you're thinking that is going to put you here. Mm-hmm. And for the longest time, I dealt with that, of basic, and that I think that's why I try to be more prolific now, because I've given up that mythology or that dream of being Stanley Kubrick or whoever it might be, and you're working for a studio doing whatever you want with billions of dollars. It's kind of like, you know what, that ain't going to happen. Let me look more at the Roger Corman myth, you know, of making films that are of good quality, low budget, fast, and a work flow that keeps them going. You know, and once I kind of saw that and gave up the shackles of, you know, fame, fortune, and whatever, and the idealized thing of a film director, I was kind of, and it goes back to, I'm going to be my own road, and not worry about, you know, someone seeing it and calling me up and say, hey, we want to give you $1 billion to direct Leonardo DiCaprio. Okay, you know, that'd be nice, but it's impossible. Mm-hmm. You know, it's the same thing with an actor with these big stars in their eyes, and they come out here and they're going to be this without the work. They think it's just going to happen. Mm-hmm. And in a sense, I thought that was, you know, you did the hard work of selling the house, making the movie, doing the stuff, putting all the things. There it is. And then it turns up black, and you don't, you know, the roulette wheel, you bet it all on red, and it's like, okay, now I got to start over. Let's make another movie and another one, and you just keep doing it. And instead of thinking one of them is going to click and pay off, it's just doing it for the love of doing it, getting it out there. If it does well, great. If it doesn't do well, then you're doing another one, or you got another 2 on the lineup. So I it's like, who cares?
Yeah.
You know, hey, it didn't make $1 million. I don't care. I'm on to another movie. Maybe that one will.
You're on to the next. Yeah. Now, speaking of the next, I know you've got a couple of films that you're working on now. You're writing. Would you like to go anyplace else? Other adventures with your film writing, your film making, other than horror? Have you thought about it? Yeah,
no, I've got a few Western scripts, film noir. I mean, all the genres I love, sci-fi. I mean, the great thing about horror is that you can kind of infuse all those different genres within it. You could make a horror Western. You could do all those things. But for me, it's just kind of like, it's, you know, making a horror film, you need, you know, horses, you need costumes, you need, you know, it's kind of all about budget.
A little more costly.
And, you know, if the opportunity arises, if someone says, hey, I've got a horse and I've got a desert, you know, Old West town, you want to use it? Okay. I'll just crank out a script that utilizes that location and the money we have. And, you know, you kind of take the budget or what you have or locations or whatever and work that around the script. Instead of, you know, I've got a closet full of scripts that will never be made or whatever. And instead of, you know, saying, what's going to happen with those?
Yeah.
Every script you write, you're learning something, or every film you make, you're learning something. So you either become a better writer, or you become a better director, or you become a better person with the people you interact with. Mm-hmm. As long as you're learning from each process, it's not a negative. You know, I've got 500 scripts that'll never be made, but you wrote 500 scripts or whatever. So you've built your writing prowess and your knowing how long it'll take, knowing what scene works, knowing what, And especially when you write a script and you make the film and you know what worked, what didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, you've got an hour worth of deleted scenes. It's like, oh geez, why
Why
did we
why did
film
we
that?
even waste that money and do that? Yeah. What's your favorite part about being a filmmaker?
The freedom, I guess.
Being an independent filmmaker. Because you wouldn't get that if it was...
Yeah, no, I mean, they wouldn't hire me to do, it's like they would look at some of the stuff and they're like, oh my God, this is, again, it goes back to this stuff of if you had one thing in your past that might be, a way to cancel you, they'll go after you.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing about being an independent, I don't give a shit, come and cancel me.
Yeah.
I welcome it.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where if you're happy doing what you're doing, again, you're not worried about other people's feelings or their... if it might ruin a job down the line, who cares?
Yeah, yeah. How'd your collaboration start with Biling?
That was on Robert Ryan did a film called Exorcism at 60,000 Feet.
You were hired to direct it?
I was hired to direct it and edit it, and we threw out names of possible cast. Biling was one. Robert Miano was another one that we had worked with before, so Robert Ryan wanted to work with him again. So it was just kind of, we brought a lot of the same people from Parasites, which Robert Ryan and I worked on, that we brought in all these other people onto his film. And, she was great. I mean, it was one of those things where here's a person who is a star and approachable and funny and nice and shows up and isn't, and knows her lines and is just a pleasure to be around.
Yeah.
Whether it's, batshit crazy for some scenes or whatever, she brings it and, no qualms.
She's unbelievable. She really is.
She's great.
She's great. But you have a relationship with her. You also had Adrienne Barbeau, who's in that movie as well.
Right.
I mean, that's and you've also worked with so many others. We did Pig Killer. We had Michael Pare in it. We had Sarah O'Reilly. These are names that some people will recognize. Jake Busey, of course, and Pig Killer in itself was that was an interesting one. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, Pig Killer again was one of those things where, being in the business so long, you come across a lot of people who are, hey, I got this idea. And I got this, and I got this, and I got that, and I got that. And then pretty soon you do a meeting, and you're having lunch, and they're like, this. Okay, give me that, and we'll do that. 90% of it falls into nothingness. People say they got the money to make something, or they want to do something. I've quickly learned, okay, show me the money first.
Yes, show me the money.
If you say you want to have $150,000 to make a movie, and you need a script, give me 10 to write it, so I at least know you're serious instead of, talk. Mm-hmm. So I remember you called me up and said, look, I know this gal who is from Canada and she wants to make a film. And I said, well, let's have lunch and meet her and talk about it.
And we did it.
And we did it. And she seemed for real, but they all seem for real.
Right, from the start.
So
and it's getting that first meeting, like we're not, like you and myself. Do we really want to have this meeting? Is it really going to go anywhere?
Right.
But but it did.
And it did, and it was one of those things where I was more optimistic seeing you set it up and you knew her, so that was better than like a blind.
Yeah.
Not knowing who the hell this person is, but. She, wanted to make this film based on Robert Willie Pickton, who was this Canadian serial killer who butchered, 50-odd women and fed them to his pigs. And that right there was interesting. And I said, okay, give me $3,000 and I'll go write the script. She cut a check, and I said, okay, well, Jeff, let's see if you can get, like $100,000 or whatever out of her, and we'll make the movie. So, it was one of those things. For the script, it was easy because I could relate to a lot of things that this guy, he grew up on a farm. He had, parents that were a little, off kilter. And, I can relate to a lot of things within his life. And the easiest way to write a script is write,
Yeah.
Or things that, that one really flowed easily. And then finished the script, sent it to her. She approved, you approved, and then we kind of started the process to get it made.
It was great. It was great. Couple other questions here. How does a filmmaker such as yourself that has everything in the game is able to do so much, but yet does not have a cell phone? How does that work, Chad? And you never have had a cell phone, have you?
I don't know. I just don't like them.
You
I don't really like talking on the phone in general.
Right. You just pick up the phone. I'll call you. We talk.
I have a
quite bit,
landline,
and it's just like, hello. You have no idea who it is,
No
or
idea.
do you have?
No.
No, you have no idea who it is. It could be a bill collector. It could be, it could be Spielberg, or it could be myself.
Well, the great thing about bill collectors, they all got burned when Unspeakable. Because, like I said, great credit. I maxed out every credit card I had, took all that money, put it into the film, and said "fuck you" to the creditors.
Yeah.
And I would get a call, hundreds of calls. I had like 10 credit cards maxed out at like 20 grand. At least 50 grand worth in credit cards. Not only to help make the movie, but to live. Because I'm like, I'm not working another job again.
Yeah.
Once you've made a movie and you've done that stuff, you kind of, I'm not going back to that. So I'll get rid of everything I own before I will do that. Eventually, if I had to, I would. I'm not going to rob a bank or anything. But
Next door.
you do that, and so I think my hatred for the telephone kind of started at that time. Where you would get unbelievable amount of calls from actual people. It wasn't the robocall then. It was basically actual people threatening your life. They would get into some really stuff if you would prod it on.
Yeah.
Then I got to the point of, oh, that's not my social. No, you've got the wrong number. So, then it quickly, but I remember having, all answering machine just full of messages. Every day you would come home and there's like 100 messages from these creditors. So my hate for the phone started then. And the fact that, again, dating the French girl, having a $3,000 phone bill from AT&T because I'd be calling France at weird hours, and I'm like, oh God, now I got to get rid of it. So I basically, I never declared bankruptcy, but I just let it go.
Yeah. They'll
threaten to sue you, but it's like no one's going to sue you for $5 grand.
Yeah.
So if you have 25, five, they might go after you, but everything was a low enough number, but there were just tons of them.
Yeah.
So after 7 years, they left me alone, and my credit was gone. But
but
started.
You've been able to rebuild, but it's without a cell phone, you have to rely upon people like myself or other producers or other people to get in touch with you or write you, because you do have email, thank goodness. But anyhow, look, we get it done, and this having you on today, I just kind of wanted to do this. I didn't want to talk about any one particular movie that you've done. Look at that, the phone's ringing. Isn't that something?
Creditor,
yeah, it's a creditor.
They found me.
They found you finally. I didn't want to talk about any one particular movie, or I wanted it to just be about your whole career as you have been able to go on your journey and work it through. What advice do you have for filmmakers out there, from people starting out or people already in the game but they just don't know what direction to take?
I think if you honestly love it, it just happens. You just have to work at it. It's not, like I said before, they're not going to call you up and say, do this and do that. Just figure out use what you have and the friends you have around you, and just kind of use that. And some people have different avenues of doing it, whether it's writing a script or buying the script or whatever. It's just find those methods. If you're someone who wants to get into the movie but you're not creative, but you have connections to tons of money, find someone that's there's so many different ways you could go, and the key is just don't give up at it. If that's what you want to do, stick with it and it'll happen.
Don't give up, and you can learn everything, because you learned everything. You didn't really do schooling. Your schooling was, you learned editing on your own. You learned directing on your own. You did producing. You've learned distribution. We talked about this earlier. You did it all on your own. So anybody and everyone can do it.
Yeah, no. If you have the excitement or the oomph to do it, you'll do it. And if you want to be an editor, if you want to do these things, just be around. In a situation go be an intern at a production company, or go do if it's writing, just the best thing to be a good writer is read a lot. Go to the library, read a lot, then watch a lot, watch a ton of movies. Watch a ton of movies with the captions on. That's another good way of not only watching a film, but also seeing how it's written. You're watching something, if you watch Goodfellas with captions on, it's like when you're hearing the words and you're seeing the words, I think that's a great way to help your writing. It's definitely helped me because I dated a girl who always had to have captions on because she was a little hard of hearing. And I always thought, this is stupid, this is obscuring the thing. But when you're stuck with it, you're holding hands, and pretty soon it's like, this is great. Oh, that's where the comma should be. You're kind of, look, I'm a high school dropout. I was never one of those things. I got my GED, went to college, the community college, but I never gave a shit about school. I always hated school. That's one of my regrets, and I wish I would have been more. If the school would have just said, here, read this and this, instead of certain things that, and I think it's, each teacher should be like, okay, Tale of Two Cities isn't working for this kid. Let's give him some Lovecraft, or let's give him some, whatever it might be. And then once he gets hooked on reading, you're going to become not only a better student, but a better, person all around, because it's really an amazing thing. And reading is definitely one of the key things to help me not only become a better writer, but become a writer at all. Because it's like it gives you kind of a starting off point. It's the same thing as a filmmaker. If you see everything that you can get your hands on, good or bad, and learn from that, it's a great thing. I mean, I've learned more from an Ed Wood film than I have a Steven Spielberg film, or an equal amount, and the same thing I hold. There's no worst movie ever or any of that stuff. There's so many great things in an Ed Wood film and in a Spielberg film, but there's things that as a filmmaker you can kind of learn from all those things that kind of combine them and just be your own voice.
That's great. That's great. What can the audience watch for now? What's out? Where can they see it? Your movies? Tell us about it.
All the older ones are free on Tubi and all those other things. So if you don't want to put in a couple bucks, go out there. Pig Killer is streaming everywhere. Scalper just came out, that's streaming everywhere. H.P. Lovecraft's The Old Ones is coming out in March, and that'll be streaming as well as Blu-ray and DVD and all that great stuff. So.
And then we've got what's next?
Next is I'm writing a script, like I said, based on Dorothy Puente. She was like the landlady killer in Sacramento, California in the 70s and 80s. And an Ed Kemper serial killer script is another one that's in the works. And we hope to shoot them both this year.
Once we do that, we'll do horse.
Yeah, we'll do the Western horse.
All right, great. Chad, thanks so much for being on.